Hey guys, it's Remy. Before we get into the video, did you guys know this clip you're about to watch is part of a longer podcast? Yeah, we actually premiere these the first Friday of every month over on our Twitch channel with full video and music breaks and all that. It's a really cool time. Twitch.tv/Unheard Sirens Inc. is where you can find it. Also, you can listen to this full podcast over on Spotify. Both the links to those are in the description box below. And also, if you could do me a favor, if you could like and comment and subscribe to the channel, all those things, tell the robots that you love us and help maybe push us out to more and more people, and that would really, really help us out. Without further ado, on with the video.
We are the Renegades, all of them that we've chosen. We are the Renegades.
We recently checked out the triumphant return of none other than Kavinsky. That's right. He dropped his first album in about 9 years, Reborn, which came out a few months ago, I believe. I want to say it came out like earlier this year, like January, February-ish, like something like that. Anyway, so yeah, Kavinsky, French artist. I have his actual real name here. I like to pull up facts and actually be prepared sometimes. Vincent Balorgi is his real name, I think, something like that.
Well done, Vincent.
Yes, well done. So yeah, he released his new album, Reborn. Obviously, in case you don't know, Kavinsky is one of the forefathers of what we now call synthwave. He kind of, started to play in those kind of 80s electro-pop sounds in like 2010, 2011, before the trend really started to blow up, and he's been one of the people who's been listed as kind of the ones to start that trend. Even though he apparently doesn't consider himself synthwave, at all.
Yeah, but whenever you start a new thing, you're not in the new thing.
Sure.
So then you see it happen, and you're like, "Wait, what?"
Sure, yeah. I guess it like some people can, but if they're started a genre like that, maybe take ownership of it. Like Judas Priest were kind of one of the first metal bands, and they kind of owned being heavy metal, whereas
that was metal to be.
We're metal. Right. Whereas Led Zeppelin, who also a lot of people list as having started metal, are like, no, we're not metal. We want nothing to do with that.
Also, they were not metal.
Yeah.
I mean, they're rock.
No,
they're not metal.
Yeah. But they didn't own it. They were
always like,
no, what's this heavy metal? No.
So maybe Kavinsky's going to go off and start some other genre because he's an innovator and he didn't like to be pinned down in a genre. I can relate. Right. I mean, I've made music and people are like, "What's your genre?" And I'm like, "Oh God, genre commitment."
I mentioned that because he's caught a lot of flack on Twitter. He's basically said stuff like, I'm going to pop one of his tweets right here on the screen right now. It was like, "And please fuck that synthwave stuff as you name it. Peace out." And a lot of people are like, not too kind to that. It's one of the reasons Unheard Sirens Incorporated doesn't have a Twitter. If you guys are wondering, we don't mess with Twitter because it's just a lot of hatred and vitriol going back and forth, and just like,
Yeah, it's one of those things like, Bob Dylan is so well known for songs that made it in the 60s and 70s, and then he began touring again, like 90s, 2000s, whatever, refused to play a single thing from his earlier work, and fans would pay $400 for a ticket, and then be really pissed off at shows because they want to hear, the classic songs that they know. Instead, he kept making new music that never really caught on. It was never as big as the stuff that he did originally, but he was so frustrated with being pinned back down to something that he refused to do it, and created a lot of friction with the fans. So I can sympathize with Kavinsky's position. He is definitely a forefather of the sound that we call synthwave, and the album sits squarely and happily within the genre, as far as I understand it. To listen to the album, it's beautiful, it's listenable, it's harmonious, it's dynamic. We talked about him in our very first episode ever, right? Because we were also reviewing movies, and we talked about Drive.
Oh, that was our second episode.
We talked about Drive, and he did the soundtrack to that.
A lot. Well, he's
got big songs featured.
Yeah, was the track that was on
taking
the soundtrack
off in the beginning and setting the tone of the entire movie.
Exactly.
And it's like and he's driving, and there's very cool synthwave music, much like the track Infinite Transit. It starts that whole movie, and it's so atmospheric. atmospheric
set to
and
like
beautiful.
Ryan Gosling like driving at
Yeah.
night and the neon lights and like
In
that
LA.
whole aesthetic, that whole
whole thing
visual and aesthetic is what's
Became synthwave.
became synthwave.
All of that
basically,
became
yeah.
synthwave. You know, it's cars and lights and neon and urban cityscapes and sort of trancing out, beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But I like about Kavinsky is that he's always moving it forward. He really has the
Yeah.
sense of me. He's perfect for something like Drive
Yeah.
because his music has a drive. And it's very easy. Like there's the other stuff that we'll be reviewing in this episode is much more challenging, much more aggressive, much more of I think probably acquired tastes because we're going to talk about Youngblood and Carpenter Brut.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I'd say of everything we're playing, other than our own track, that Kavinsky stuff is
Yeah.
probably like the widest palette
Right.
of people,
Yeah.
regardless of their
I'll
background.
preface this by saying like when I was first really getting into the synthwave genre, first we were just making what we were making,
we didn't call it a genre.
And the
yet.
genres we were experimenting with just happened to be very like kind of retro tinge stuff. Like we played with stuff that was kind of sounded kind of 80s, kind of 90s, kind of R&B, and then kind of industrial and whatever. And then like we kind of started playing in the kind of 80s kind of retro pop thing. And a friend of ours made a playlist for us of a bunch of tracks that had some synthwave and had some post-punk and some goth stuff. And I remember the first, of course, hearing Kavinsky's Night Call, and I thought it was a good, really good track, but I didn't like love it the way a lot of people did. Like I don't know, like the kind of like weird like vocoder thing. I was just kind of like, like I liked it the more it was going, but I was like, I wasn't like super like, oh yeah, Kavinsky's the best. But then I started listening recently to a lot of Kavinsky's other material, and I like that a lot more. It's weird. That seems to be how my musical taste goes, is like the really like popular tracks that everybody loves by a certain artist are usually the ones I'm like, that's not that great. I like the deeper cuts on the album. Like that's just how my tastes tends to skew for whatever reason. So I started listening, to Kavinsky's other stuff, and this new album, Reborn, I love it. It is straight bangers. I've heard it
it's beautiful.
3 or 4 times, and like my most recent time listening to it, just like within the last like couple days to prepare for this podcast, like I was just like, ooh, I really like that track. Ooh, I really like that track. The next one comes on. Ooh, I really like that one too. I'm like singing along to every track, and I'm like, it's just stellar work. And like the collaborators he picked to work with. Every other track seems to have like a guest vocalist on there because of course Kavinsky's the producer behind it. He's not doing any of the vocals on it. So
but it's beautiful. Everything's so suited to it, and also people have gotten away from enjoying albums, and there's a lot more of just grabbing a track and listening to a playlist that's generated for you in a mix style by your favorite AI bot behind Spotify bots and Pandora bots and the YouTube bot that my brother and I call Al for the algorithm.
Yep.
He's got rhythm. He likes to go. So
that was
Al plays us really good music.
that was a character in the new Space Jam movie. That was
No.
the villain, was Al G Rhythm.
Oh shoot!
Yeah.
Well, he's getting around apparently because we did not know that.
Yeah.
So you can just call him Al because that's a Paul Simon song.
Call him Al, yeah.
Yeah, you can just call him Al. That's the main point. That's the YouTube bot. I love that bot. I enjoy that bot, and it plays me good music all the time. But one thing that I really appreciate about this album is that you can start to finish enjoy the entire thing. Like it's a complete arc. It's a work of art. And it's not just individual tracks. Like as you hone in on a track, oh, I like that track, and then the next, oh, I like that track. But I really like the album. That's really, really cool. And at the same time, I wouldn't say that he feels monotonous, because sometimes if everything's very consistent, then you might say the whole album's consistent. It's not like that. There's definitely diversity and playing with different things, and there's instrumental tracks and there's tracks with much more vocals. That variety is really nice. It's just the entire thing is. It's just really, really pleasant. I would say he's like gateway drug to everything happening in synth right now, because even if you didn't normally like this music, I think you could listen to this new album by Kavinsky and go, there could be something to this. It's so pleasant.
No, it's funny because
so
like
pleasant.
as much as he does not own the label of synthwave and he really derides
He doesn't like
everyone
it.
else in the genre, he just dropped maybe the most synthwave album ever. Like it's like the most pure. Like if somebody was like,
beautiful.
if somebody just like said, pick one artist or one song or whatever, one thing that exemplifies the genre of synthwave, I'd be like, Kavinsky. Here you go.
This
That's
album.
it. It's right there.
This album. It's beautiful.
That is it is purest,
It's beautiful. I'm sorry if he
undiluted,
hates the
unmessed
label,
with form.
but it's of everything that's evolved in this whole constellation of sounds that are associated with synthwave, and it's just it's right there. It's just like this pure tone. It's like pure, clear. It's just beautiful. It's produced in a lovely fashion. It's just so the sounds are very, very balanced. I mean, it's interesting and dynamic. I love. It's so appropriate that he was like first in this movie Drive. I just feel like his music has drive. It has forward motion, and you're just grooving with it the whole time. It just keeps taking you somewhere. It doesn't really just stop.
And
it's very. Like, I do want to... I mean, the first time we listened to the whole album together was in the car on drives. And that was, like... It was perfect.
Yeah.
Sun setting and everything's changing around you, and you just have this, like, beautiful music playing. It's like, perfect.
Yeah, I definitely encourage you to dig deep. I think he's only dropped, like, 2 other, like, full albums. Like, his catalog is very thin for how, big of a, influence he's been on the scene and everything. But I definitely would recommend you check out his other 2 albums. I think one of them's called Outrun, and I'm blanking on what the name of the other one is. Yeah,
because I've heard his stuff in the mix format. It was just haven't studied all the albums as albums, but certainly will, because one of the things you were saying is like, do you like the album? What do you think before? What do you think after? Are you a fan? And I would say like, yes, definitely a fan.
Yeah. And I'd say he's one of our kind of big influences, and one of the ones I've started citing. When you're if you don't know, when you're an independent musician, you kind of have to like find your audience and find your people. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to say, what artists are you most similar to? And I've struggled with that, honestly, because like we take so many different influences from so many different places, and I'm like, who the hell do we sound like? And
we
so
do
like
sound
I
a little bit like towards Kavinsky.
Yeah.
I was thinking that too, because the other 2 artists that we're going to review today, Youngblood and Carpenter Brute, actually I relish and adore all 3 of these. I am a fan, all 3. Yeah. And I can't say that for everything that we've reviewed so far in the show. There's things that I like to differing degrees or whatever. But this is like, all awesome. All
Spoiler alert, we like all the stuff we're going to be to about tonight. Yes.
We can still critique it.
Exactly.
Still critique it. And
we're still going to go deep.
What I think is interesting about it is they're very, very, very different. These are very, very, very different things. And Youngblood is not associated with synthwave, but Carpenter Brute kind of is.
Yeah, Carpenter Brute is.
Which is really interesting because they sound...
Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit later. Yeah.
Some heavier... They're both... Those other 2 artists have heavier styles. One's a little bit more industrial influenced. One's more punk influenced. They're both more challenging. Their lyrics are challenging. Their genre, their tonality is very challenging. The themes they're singing and talking about are in your face challenging. And I would say Kavinsky is not. Kavinsky's, there's some sort of just like this purity thing. It's just going right through. And he's just tapped into this flow. Yeah. And we are influenced by these much more like upset, frustrated, outraged, rebellious renegades figures and their music. I mean, I come from more the industrial side earlier on. You come from more the punk side earlier on. Yeah. So this is a really cool episode because we've landed in synthwave. It kind of has all of the things. Yeah. And we've landed closest to Kavinsky. The music we've created in the last album in particular, Renegades of the Portal, is the closest, I think, because we've softened the rougher things. So from our previous, So I'll wait on some of the harsher influences that are a little more aggressive to talk about with Carpenter Brute or Youngblood. But I did feel like, the different vocals, and he's got some beautiful saxophone solos, and you've been very into the sax.
Oh yeah,
can't get enough.
I've been trying to get as much of the sax in this.
He needs
as
a lot of
possible.
sax.
I need a lot of sax. Sax sells. But
do you think that statement's going to get any traction? We're so cheesy.
Yeah, we are.
Sorry, bad puns.
But I mean, who doesn't love a good saxophone? Like one of my friends, like, you don't want to sound like Kenny G. Like, no, like you can put saxophone in your tracks, and it's not Kenny G. I'm talking like the David Bowie use of like sax. Y'all. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah.
But anyway,
it's like the instrumentation reminds me, and like just major keys and very listenable, and it sort of gets under your skin. You know what I mean? Like you can listen over and over and over this stuff, and like you sort of like be absorbing it. And with our music, I've worked on music since I was a kid, and I've been in bands for a really long time and made a lot of music. And sometimes it was hard to keep listening to all the music. And I go back and, you just sort of critique stuff that you make earlier on, but now I feel like we've gotten to a place with Unheard Sirens where I've been needing to like listen to it a lot and then listen to the remixes and listen to different takes, and then people are studying different parts of what we played that are sort of talking to us about our music and taking me back into the Regeneration, the previous album, which was another parallel that this one is Reborn, and our former album just before the most recent was Regeneration, and the themes of being reborn and regenerated, they're identical. So I also related to like the themes of what Kavinsky in his own identity is exposing through his music are directly related to the themes of our identity and what we're exposing through our music. So I just felt like there's just such a close parallel. It feels like a kindred spirit as a musician.
No, absolutely. No, 100%. Yeah, I would definitely recommend you guys check out this album if you haven't yet. It's
Reborn, man.
Fantastic, Reborn. Yeah, and
we all need it.
Yeah, as you're saying, like the track titles, I'm like, it's like he wrote it for us, because what is called Renegade, and we just released Renegades of the Portal, and we latched onto this whole theme of we're renegades from like another dimension
multiverse,
and
another part of the multiverse
and stuff like that. And also he has a track called like Outsider, I think, and like Vigilante and Reborn. Our last album
we have Warrior Punk
and
we have Regeneration.
It's
I mean, his
so
track names
things,
are like almost like our track names. And
it's like you plucked them from our head. It's like, what's happening?
Like we are vibing on the same thing out there in the multiverse, in the psychosphere, in our mental atmosphere. You know, you get these little downloads of insight as an artist, and then you find these other artists who are like, oh, you got that download too? And it's like, it was out there in the psychosphere.
Yeah.
And then like you're just open enough, you know, calling to the muse, and you're trying to tap into creativity, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this metaphor, this word, this language, this sound. And then you start to see other people that were downloading, they were receiving the same kind of insights, and they're crafting it, and it's just like just one other version of you. And you know, I've talked with other artists where there's a journey, because you can feel like, oh no, I was going to be so unique and individual and that's my thing, but like that's not how I feel about it at all anymore. It is nice, we have to have our ways of being distinctive and getting known, but I do feel like it's also that we're parts of movements, we're part of a change. You can't stop the movement. There's a movement of things are happening, and we're part of something, and not being alone is a good thing.
Yeah. No, 100%.
So I love seeing this reflection of stuff we're doing and what Kavinsky's doing, because he's had, you know, like acclaim and a lot of notice, and it's like, wow, that's amazing. You know, as we're starting out, we're newer to the genre, we're newer to creating this music together and putting out the albums and stuff. And he's been there for, you know, well over a decade, laying stuff that's just really influential. So it's very humbling and awesome to find so much sort of commonality between what we do and what he does.
Yeah. No, yeah. I 100% agree with that. And you gotta like, exactly, as far as like, I think you can, as an artist, you can find what's individually yours, but also recognize we all influence each other. We can all take influence, and you don't have to be like, this is my thing and that's your thing, and like, I don't know, like there's a lot of people making music and making art, and I think that's a good thing. I think honestly sometimes people complain about the oversaturation, but I think it makes things better, not worse. You know, I think you just gotta like, you can't compare yourself to others too much. You gotta just, you know, do what you're doing and believe in it, and know what makes you and hold on to that. And,
and exploring what other artists are doing and continuing to get impressed and surprised and inspired. You know, I often write a lot of new material that I'm going to use in future songs at live concerts of other artists that I love. Like being in their space and just being in all of the inspiration that created their music to be there live. And it can happen, you know, with a road trip and listening in the car or studying at home, but especially live, I find that I have to have like a notebook and a pen with me when I go to see live music, because so many other inspirations come to me as I'm listening of my own stuff.
Gotcha.
It might have nothing to do with the genre or the themes or anything. It's not like, oh, I'm going to write my version of that song now. It's just like just being in the creative cloud of space and of it really is inspiration. And then other things start to come, and I'll find things I've been sifting through in my thoughts all of a sudden come together, and I'm like, oh, that's a really cool thing. I'm going to follow that thread. That's going to become something, a poem or song.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's great that people are creating. Because what are they going to do? Just, I don't know, drive around and buy more Big Macs? No, go create music. Like, that's a
Exactly,
much
yeah.
better thing to do.
Mhm.
Like, you don't need to
Yes.
just, consume fuel and eat fast food. Like,
Exactly.
go make something,
Go make
and
something.
it's fine. Like, make a comic book, go do, video game, create your own games. Like, creativity.
Exactly. Creativity.
Writing and live journal. And, not everybody's a musician, but just like to create, to really work with the things that inspired you and to seek inside yourself what it is that you want to put out there. It'll be a reflection of other things in the times, and it'll be a mishmash of all of your influences. That's how we all are.
Yep. Yes.
So,
yeah.
do it.
Absolutely. Do it. Do that and consume, good influences.